people from different places. Thanks for being here. Well, it's 4 o'clock by my computer tells me. So I'd love to get us started. We're here on a webinar on Zoom, and we've also got the YouTube Live running. So welcome, whichever platform you are visiting, or even if you're watching this recording, this is being recorded. So welcome, everyone. We wanted to do a webinar and offer a series of webinars on neuroscience made easy. We've got a lot of people who've said, wow, give us more neuroscience. We want to know more, want to make it easy. And not to oversimplify it, because neuroscience and the brain are very complicated, but there's a few straightforward, simple things that we can hang on to that'll help us work with people, whether we're coaches or HR professionals or trainers or leaders. Especially if you're leaders, a team leader, this particular webinar might be really useful for you because it is about increasing engagement and collaboration. But even if you're a team member, not just the leader of the team, but you're a team member, you could bring some of this information to your teams and help all of you become more engaged and collaborative. And it'll come back to doing it together because we have a social brain, and it's in that collection of how we do things together is really what makes our culture. I can see people continuing to arrive, so welcome, welcome. Welcome. I'm just doing some introductory comments. Welcome to Increasing Engagement and Collaboration. Hi, Nikki. I just see from London. Hi, Nikki. So let's. I'm going to continue. Here's what I want you to know. Part of what I know about the brain is that we like to have expectations. We like to know what's coming. We like a little bit of certainty. So I want to let you know what's going to happen in this webinar. We have an hour. I'm wanting to make it interactive. It's one of my values, I suppose, is to do interactive things. It's also a way that the brain works because the brain learns, we learn when we interact with material. So passive absorption isn't as effective as interacting with material. So there will be some interactivity. There'll be a couple of things I'll be asking you to do, like recalling experiences. So you'll have some experiences of your emotional brain. And this is all for the purpose of understanding how the brain creates emotions and how those emotions influence engagement and collaboration. So it's all about engagement and collaboration. And ultimately, it's all about emotions and how we manage them. So there will be some interactivity a bit later in this session. In about a half an hour or so, you'll have a chance to speak with some of the other participants in a breakout room. There'll be a question that you can just talk to each other about, but how do you create engagement and collaboration in your own work environments? And then there'll be a little Q&A time. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, and Linda, our Zoom pilot of the day, she's going to be taking those and collecting them and feeding them back to me towards the end so we can have a good Q&A session. And I'll also be telling you about the Rewired to Relate program that this information comes from. At Schuk Svensson, we run a series of programs, a suite of programs, the Rewired set of programs, suite of programs, from Rewired to Lead, Rewired to Coach, Rewired to Communicate, and Rewired to Relate is our foundation course that just helps people understand the brain, the emotions that we create, and how the social brain either creates collaboration or destructive relationships. And it's happening all the time in teams. We're very socially oriented. So we're tracking each other all the time, mostly unconsciously. Our conscious mind takes in so little of what's really going on, but our unconscious mind is tracking everybody, deciding, do we like this person? Do we not? Do we like this thing that's happening? And acting upon it. And then moving towards people and creating a collaborative feel, or moving away and creating some destruction or destructivity. And sometimes it's just mild. Sometimes it's bigger than others. Yeah. So here we go. Employee engagement. So when we talk about creating engagement and collaboration, we are talking about employee engagement. But you know, this could also be true for your friendship groups and families. Mostly we'll be talking about employee engagement, but If you want to apply it to other groups, that's fine too. But let's just get a common definition for ourselves. So we're looking together at what employee engagement is. You can see in this definition that I pulled from a Forbes article about employee engagement. It's about an emotional commitment. You know, engagement isn't just practical and, oh, I'm doing my work. We do our work because of the emotions behind it. So we are emotionally engaged. So an employee has an emotional commitment to the organization and its goals. So that's what employee engagement is. And a simple definition of what is collaboration. It's when two or more people are co-creating together. And you've probably experienced those times when it felt great. You have a few people together around a table, maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 3 or 2, and you co-create something. And there's something amazing that happens when brains start working together. I bring my expertise, you bring your expertise. We perhaps have a little debate from time to time, and we come up with something new. It's a beautiful thing, and I think a lot of people love that experience. But it doesn't always happen, because sometimes we are frustrated with each other and we're dug into our emotions and we want to be right and we don't like the other person's view and we don't want to hear another person's view, especially if they're not listening to ours. There's all kinds of things that get in the way of collaboration and make it frustrating. Again, it's from the emotional brain where all that stuff is coming from. So let's dig into this emotional brain, the limbic system. You might have heard that term. So limbic system is a bit in the very center of your brain, sort of fist size-ish. It's a collection of bits that are working together. The amygdala, a lot of people know about amygdala hijack. It's the amygdala that supplies a lot of this emotion. That's just one part of the limbic system. And here's the thing that I really want people to understand. This limbic system is a functional part of us that is trying to keep us safe. And it is fear-based, and it's generating fear all the time. And it generates that, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but it generates it in a way that says, don't go there. You know, if you walk to the edge of a cliff and you look down, you know, your brain and body are telling you, don't go near that edge. Similarly, it's telling you, don't go near those people, don't do that thing, because it's afraid of some things. And what it's afraid of was stuff that it was afraid of eons ago when the brain was developing and evolving out on the savannah. So you'll see in a little bit all the different elements, like belonging is one of them. Our brain is terrified to not belong. We do not want to be rejected. And our fear, concern, panic around possibly being rejected will keep us reined in, have us holding our cards to our chest, playing it safe, maybe not sharing our best ideas. So you get around the table, and if somebody is feeling that they might be rejected or not included, they will go to this safekeeping place, this protected place. And that's not helpful for collaboration. So if everybody is clear, oh, I belong, I'm a valued member of this team, that's going to bring in a lot more of their ability to collaborate and lean in, if I can use that expression. So this is based on a brain that was designed for a very different world. It is not a 21st century designed brain. The brain is also socially oriented. I mentioned that a few minutes ago. What that means is tracking other people, worried about what they think of us, worried, do they like us? Do they like our ideas? And it is always paying attention to the people around us and the people around the table, in good ways and bad, you know, in positive and negative, in moving towards them and moving away from them. So on this element about fear-based, this limbic system, this emotional brain, is wired with 5 times the amount of circuitry dedicated to fear than it is to possibility. So, for example, if you have something neutral coming at you, something you've never seen before, you're 5 times more likely to say that's something dangerous. That's just how we're wired. Now we can overcome that, and we can start recognizing that we do that, but it's still going on. It's still going on to say, oh, that thing is, you don't know what it is, it's dangerous. It's just how we're wired. So the same will be happening with people volunteering ideas. Oh, this is a new and radical idea. Most likely, your brain will say, no, that's not a good idea. That's the first place it'll go. And in collaboration, that isn't very useful. Oh, that idea I don't like. We just need to know that that's going on. And if there's a lot of trust and there's a lot of connection between people, that will calm down a bit and we'll be able to hear one another better. And of course, if we practice that and we keep practicing that and keep learning that we can trust each other, all of that just gets better and better. It's like the collaborative, our ability to collaborate is like an upward spiral. We collaborate a little and it works well, and then we trust each other some more, and then it can be a little better and a little better. And the destructive cycle is a downward cycle as well. Yeah, oh, I don't know if, there's a little bit of suspicion, and then we want our suspicions confirmed, and those will be confirmed. And then, of course, that person is really suspicious, and we just keep confirming, and it's a downward spiral into the destructive nature of teams. So I hope you've gotten how this brain will pull you towards other into engagement, or it'll push you away into disengagement. And it's just doing that on a threat reward cycle. It likes some things, it thinks it's good for survival, or it doesn't like some things because it's interpreting that it's bad for survival. So good for survival, bad for survival, that's its measuring stick. So I want to give you a little example experience of your own social brain. I just saw a question. It says, can I say it again? 5 times more wet. So I'll just answer that since I noticed it. I'll go back to this. Natalie, you asked 5 times more circuitry. So commitment to, let's put it that way. There's 5 times more commitment to fear reactions than there is to positivity reactions. Some of you might know that there's a statement that says, if you want to keep relationships whole and happy, you need 5 times more positivity than you do negativity or constructive feedback. I think those things are related. I don't have the research on that, but I do bet that they're related. Okay, I'm moving on the other direction. Here's an experience. So if you're willing, if you're in a space where you can, I invite you to close your eyes. The reason we close our eyes, just so you know, is that it lets go, as you close your eyes, all that brain power that's committed to processing visual information, it can relax. That takes about 60% of your brain power. So if you close your eyes, you can just have a lot more, 6% more of your brain power, so you can focus on yourself. So I invite you to close your eyes. You don't have to, of course. And recall a time when you felt engaged when you were working with others. There was a give and take, there were ideas floating around the table, there were some good ideas and maybe bad ideas, but the judgment level was low. You felt good, inspired, and it was working. Just recall that time, notice who was there, notice what it felt like, notice what you appreciated about it, and notice what your body feels like. Because what's happening in this time is there's chemicals, it's all chemistry, there's chemicals coming from your brain. That's your brain saying, this is a good thing, do it more. I'd love for you to share in the chat box just a word or two of what you feel as you recall a time when you were inspired by working with others, when you felt engaged. There's Leslie saying creative, electric, happy, inspired, curious, good vibes, motivated, respect, energized, flow, lots of energy and energized, fluttering around your heart, high energy, excited, exhilaration. Beautiful, beautiful, fun. These are beautiful. This is what happens, and that is the possibility with collaboration. This is your brain's reward network telling you this is a good thing. Your brain saying this is good for survival, being with people, working with people, it's a good thing. And it's generating dopamine and oxytocin. Those are 2 fantastic brain chemicals that make us feel good, providing this dopamine and oxytocin. And the message that your brain is trying to tell you is this is good for your survival, do it more. And sometimes we get addicted to these things, but that's another story for another time. It's telling you this is a good thing, do it more. We like it, yeah? And we can consciously create it if we choose to. And I'll have some tips for you about how to create that. So please look through the chat. There's so many wonderful things. There's proud, like-minded, more energy, some really lovely comments in the chat box. This is the field of what we call rewards, moving towards people, and the spirit of collaboration and engagement. So appreciate that for the moment, because I'm going to go to this other place, this darker side, if we can call it a darker side. And it's a time when you felt disengaged. Maybe you were angry. Maybe you wanted to get back at someone. Close your eyes if you want to. And we're just going to stay here for a moment, just to feel what it was like to be disengaged, angry at someone, resentful maybe, wanting revenge. Somebody did something that was unfair. You felt like you weren't being treated properly, or someone else wasn't treated properly. And just tune into those emotions for the moment and the chemistry of it. And again, if you would put in the chat box the kind of feelings that you have: constricted, hurt, tense, belittled, negative, anger, shut down, ignored, closed-minded. Yeah, others around you might be doing things and you feel closed-minded, diminished, nauseous, shut off, numb, stupid. Yeah, you know, that's a really good comment. We feel shut down and stupid. If there's an environment around us that is tense, it actually tenses our brain, and we have less access to our wisdom and our intelligence and our memory. We don't learn very well in that space. It's not a great place for learning or productivity. This is your brain's fear network. So we have the reward network. This is the fear network, and it's sending you fight or flight messages saying, this is bad for your survival. Something dangerous is happening. If you don't change it, you're going to die. And I'm not really exaggerating, because that's its job. Because when our brains were forming, if you were being belittled or kicked out of the tribe or threatened in some way, it is possible that you would have been, left the tribe out on your own, and the woolly mammoth comes and chomps you up, and there you're gone. So there is this connection that, oh my God, we'll die if this thing continues. So you get this massive fight, flight, freeze, and then you want to fight back, and that's what makes you angry and want to get back at people. And this creates a destructive cycle. The chemicals are adrenaline and cortisol is a stress hormone, and the purpose of these is for you to act. Short term, it's meant for short, specific action, get out of there. But the problem is we live with this stuff much longer periods of time than it was designed for. So if you're working with a team and you have to keep going back, you'll keep finding, you keep getting this re-injection of cortisol and adrenaline. It's not healthy. It's not good for you. It's not good for others around you either. Yeah. So good. Thank you for visiting that place. Please shake that off. Take a big, deep breath. Tap back into your collaborative space if you can. It'll make your brain happier. It'll help you listen and engage with me. So big breath. That's one of the keys to getting out of that space, by the way, that destructive, that cortisol space, is to take a breath. Get as much oxygen as you can. See if you can get your body to relax. And it actually will metabolize those chemicals and get you back to your best self. We're not spending a lot of time on that dynamic, but it's an important part of all of the work that we do, is to help people get back to their best self. Doesn't have to necessarily be the amped up dopamine place, but a neutral place that has you make better decisions and see things more, see more complexity and deal with more complexity and difficulty and that kind of thing. So I'm hoping you've let go of your cortisol and adrenaline, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time, so keep breathing. Just as a quick summary review, this emotional brain of ours creates threat responses and reward responses. And the threat responses were the second experience we had with the cortisol and adrenaline, where people felt powerless, frustrated, not appreciated, invisible, and all those destructive things. That's from the threat side. And from the reward side, we felt all that energy and aliveness and all of that. It's kind of like a choice. Are we going threats? Or are we going reward? And we have a little bit of control over that. A little bit. The brain is wired this way, it's hardwired, but there's also some other wiring that we can change. So I'm going to show you these 6 elements here in what we call the Be Safe and Certain model. And we use this model for a lot of things, for helping people understand where they're towards and away feelings are coming from. Belonging is about, are you part of the tribe? Are you part of the group? So I've mentioned that already. Do you belong? Are you feeling like you're being kicked out or might be kicked out? So the reward side of this is that feeling of that you had when you were collaborating. You feel good, you feel connected, you feel safe. The threat side is when you think, oh no, somebody's going to reject me. They're not going to accept me. So you can see how the threat and reward side works. Status is about position and roles. So role clarity. Are your roles clear? Is your role clear? Do you know what your purpose is in the meeting or collaborative situation or in an organization or in your family or in your friendship group? What's your role? And without knowing your role or position or how you can contribute, there's also an element of respect here. Are you respected for the role you play? Because as you feel like you're disrespected or you're not occupying the right place, or you're in the wrong place, or you're assigned the wrong role, all of that creates that threat. But when you feel like it's clear and you know your role, you feel a lot more stable. So you can imagine through reorganizations, people are thinking, oh, there's a reorganization coming. Not only is there uncertainty about who's doing what or what's going to happen and what does it look like, but what's my role? What about me? You know, we often call that ego, and it is just part of the limbic system saying, what about me? It was important. It's hardwired in that we have a role to play. Autonomy. Autonomy is about independence and freedom. Do you get to choose? Do you get to contribute? Are your contributions, are your individual contributions appreciated? Do you get to innovate? A threat to autonomy is micromanagement. And a reward to autonomy is when you get to create on your own. Those of you who are independent practitioners, you probably have a high desire for autonomy and a high love for autonomy. You know, these different elements there are preferences. We all have all of them, a need for all of them, but we'll have some preferences. Some of us appreciate more autonomy, others want more belonging. Some people want more certainty. So you can see values, personal values coming out here as well. Fairness. Look, fairness is a really big deal. When there is unfairness, just think about a time when something unfair happened, not even involving you. You saw somebody do something unfair to somebody else. The feeling that we get, the guttural feeling of, I want to hurt that person, is normal and natural. That's where a lot of revenge comes from. And it comes from the perception of unfairness or the perception of fairness. All these things are perceived, by the way. That's why we can change them, because we can change how we perceive things. The hardwiring will always be there, but we can change our perceptions. So if we perceive something as unfair, we get this very strong reaction of wanting to fix it, wanting to get back at, wanting to punish someone. And we can do that in very subtle, clever ways. Snide remarks, little email comments, leaving somebody off the invitation to the next meeting or the party or the virtual coffee chats or whatever it is. There's little ways that we get back at, and people in organizations get back at. So I think that's a really big element. In a lot of the research that's been done, Gallup's done a huge amount of research about engagement in organizations. And as of a few years ago, the levels of engagement were relatively low. So 25%, I believe it was, said highly, and a lot of engagement. And there was about 25% of people actively disengaged, and another 35%, I'm sorry, I wasn't meaning to bring these statistics, so hold them lightly, and they've changed in recent years. But more than half of people in organizations were either disengaged or actively disengaged. And when I was hearing some of the reports of why people were disengaged, a lot of it felt like it was reactions to fairness or a perception of unfairness. I didn't get a pay raise. I didn't get a pay raise as much as that person did, or a pay rise, excuse me. I'm in the UK. I didn't get the promotion. I should have had that role, or that person should have had that role. And we perceive the world from our frame, and we expect it to go like that. And then when it doesn't, our expectations are dashed, but also we feel that it's unfair. And that, again, unfairness just creates a very strong reaction. So expectation is the next one. We invent expectations when we don't know what's going to happen. We create some expectations. Oh, I get a new job. I expect it's going to be wonderful. I'll have a promotion in such and such a time. Or there's a picture we have in our heads about how it's going to be. And unless that was clarified and we create some expectations together, like a psychological contract with someone, then the brain is free to invent its own expectations. And when those are not met, our expectations are not met, we get disappointed. And disappointment can lead to this feeling of unfairness. But disappointment hurts. It turns on the pain centers of the brain, and it sucks away all of our dopamine. So we end up feeling really flat, which will create disengagement. And there's pain centers, and the brain wants to avoid pain. So if we keep getting disappointed over and over again, we're not likely to set very high expectations the next time. We'll set low expectations because we're not going to put ourselves in that position to be disappointed again. So there's sort of a rolling effect of this one. So that's what expectations does. And then there's certainty. What's going to happen? In this COVID-19, we're in lockdown, we're not in lockdown. How is it going to go? What are the numbers? Can we go on holiday? Not, all of that creates uncertainty, instability, makes people crazy. And so similar to expectations, they'll make up their own certainty. Well, this is the way it is for me, or I think it's this. This is the cause of the coronavirus, where it came from. And if I believe that, then I feel certain. The brain would rather be certain. It's okay if it's wrong. You'd rather be certain than right. So there we go. There's a lot of places for the emotional brain to have rewards and threats. Here's some tips. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you some tips for how to create more of these elements, because what you want to do in an organization, if you want engagement, you want to create rewards around these things. You want to avoid the threats. You want to create dopamine and oxytocin and create trust. And these 6 elements are ways to do that. So here are the tips. Belonging. How do you create a sense of belonging? Not just including people to meetings, but emotionally help people feel that they belong. In this time when there's a lot of talk about racism and inclusivity and diversity, this is at play. How do you help people feel that they belong? Not just include them and have them sit at a table at a meeting, but actually feel like they belong. Status, make your roles and responsibilities clear. By the way, you might want to make some notes for yourself, because in a couple of minutes, you're going to go talk to people about this, and I'll be asking you, what will you do to create more engagement and collaboration in your workplace? And some of these tips might be ones that you want to use. So make some notes for yourself if you wish, or turn your memory banks open and on. Make roles and responsibilities clear. That gives people a sense of status. Allow people to use their own ideas and solutions, minimize micromanagement, train people in coaching skills, or train leaders in how to empower. Fairness, so many ways to check how people are creating a sense of unfairness, or where they're getting any sense of unfairness from. But a lot of it will come from a lack of communication, and they've just made up why that person got that job. There was an empty seat, and it seemed like this person over here on the org chart should have gotten it. And all of a sudden, the cousin of the CEO is in there, and it's like, where is it? So communicate. Why are decisions made? Expectations. Have psychological contract conversations with your people. That means, here's what I expect from you. What do you expect from me? How do we make sure that our expectations match, or mesh at least? Have that with teams and groups. What are we expecting from this meeting? What are we expecting from our next quarter? What are we expecting from this project? really work together to set clear and realistic expectations, because it's so open for people making things up. Really helpful to have people share. Here's what I expect, and here's what I'm getting or not. And then communicate what's happening for certainty. The times these days are very uncertain. Who knows? But you might be able to decide what is certain. Okay, we're working from home until the end of the year, or once a week we'll go into the office, or some kind of certainty, even if it changes later. I noticed that as lockdown happened, it's like lockdown's going to be for 3 weeks. A lot of us knew it was going to be a lot longer, but people can go, okay, 3 weeks, and then we change it. But we can imagine this 3 week. It gives us 3 week period. It can give us a sense of certainty. It's, okay, I know what's going to happen. So another thing to think about in these tips, if you cannot create certainty, or it's impossible to have some autonomy in whatever situation you're thinking about for engagement, what else can you bring from this be safe and certain list, from these 6 elements? For example, if you can't have certainty, how do you amp up belonging? Or possibly amp up autonomy, if that's what your people like. So there's ways to balance with each other. Balance across the 6 elements. Okay, here we go. Here's your question. What will you do to create more engagement and collaboration in your workplace? And if you work on your own, that's fine. Are there people you interact with? How do you create more engagement and collaboration in those interactions? You're going to be in a breakout room. There will be about 4 people in that breakout room, and you'll have a conversation for 10 minutes. And please share with one another, have it be collaborative, listen to each other's ideas, brainstorm, perhaps share a story that you can all create from. So 4 people. If you end up in a room and nobody else is there, or people's videos are off or something, that reminds me, Linda, we need to be able to turn people's videos, give them video and audio access when we go into these rooms. I hadn't thought about that. So I imagine I've just surprised Linda with that, our Zoom champion. So in a moment, let's, you know what? Let's.
Okay, so breakout room. I'm going to move you to a breakout room
Okay.
right now. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Oh,
Who
Jeff
else?
says there's 16 of us out here.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in this main session.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm confused because everybody's. We have a total of 19 breakout rooms.
We can just have a conversation here if you can't put this in.
Why don't we just do that, Linda? So I know we have quite a few people. So Noella, you've landed alone in a breakout room. Back here for a cocktail talk instead. Okay, great.
Yeah, it was funnier this way. Although I'm very okay with being alone in a room. But I thought I may miss the ideas. Hi.
I'm here also.
Hi, Frank. I can hear your voice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to turn on your videos.
Yeah, they are on, I think.
I can see, and Jeff, I can see you. Yeah. And you can, can you see everybody?
Nope.
No. Okay.
No.
I'll turn off my, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm out of slides anyway, right? No, I'll be coming back to the slides. And if you could put gallery view on.
I've done that.
Then we can all see each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yep.
So what will you do to create collaboration? So what of those things inspired you? Those tips. I can put them back if you want. The tips, the be safe and certain tips for creating more sense of belonging. Anybody have?
Involving them in creating the agenda.
Great.
Beforehand.
Yeah, creating the agenda beforehand. Fantastic. Noella, how about you?
Yeah, I was about to say something. You know what? I paid a lot of attention to your words, and what struck me is that at the end of the safe word, like SAFE,
Uh-huh.
are actually the last two words, the first two that fear starts with. So at the end of safe is fear.
Yes.
And I think, because I work with teachers, I think this is a good way to explain that it's okay to be fearful sometimes, because they tend to react in a very strict context of education, rules, and so on. And they find particularly different working online to accept the fear of judgment, to be recorded, to say things like anything that they may not be, that the things that may not be their first profession, or they are very skilled in. So they lack this courage to explore, to get curious sometimes. So I really think it's, I don't know if I will write it in the chat.
Okay, great.
So it's like the end. No, it's just a word made of two words, like say fear, like fear. It's at the end of the safe zone, and it's part of it. So,
and the fear is all about
word.
trying to create safety. Yeah.
Mhm.
So others, what would you do? What specifically? So there was create an agenda. There's have people understand about fear. What else will you do?
Well, first of all, I couldn't open my camera. Sorry about that. But
That's okay.
depending on your list, I don't know why you write the first thing, belonging, at the very beginning. But I think the belonging is the key element for most environment, because without being a part of a community or a group or something, you can't own it. Without owning it, if you don't feel belonged to that subject, everything starts there. Then comes the other. If you don't have the belonging, then you won't get a status or autonomy.
Yeah.
People.
We write
So
belonging
on.
first in this model because we feel it is the first thing. Sheila, others, welcome back to the main room. If you're, we had a bunch of people that didn't get to breakout rooms, so we're having the conversation here. Sorry, sorry, were you going to say more? Cookson, if I'm saying your name right.
Yeah, you say right. Nothing else. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Others? Mina, Janalyn, Dr. Amma. Those are videos off. You guys feel free to come in. Jeff, what do you think? How would you
Just
create more? Yeah.
the strong tie-in with emotion, kind of the focusing on that, not, yeah, that was kind of what I was getting.
Like allowing emotions with.
Well, let's say like for belonging, including people emotionally, not just like you said, physically at the table, or say just kind of making sure that they feel emotionally part of it as well.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. As opposed to just, okay, we're just sitting here together. No. Sheila, what do you think? How would you create more engagement and collaboration? I think our connection's not.
Sorry, I realised I was in another group and I got thrown out, so I've just reconnected now. Because I work on my own, I was actually thinking, can you hear me okay?
Yes, can hear you. Yes. Well, we could. Donalia? Donalia.
Well, Donnelly, yeah. It doesn't matter. One of the other things I think I found important in having people feel they belong is to really appreciate their time and the energy that they bring, and to welcome that, say that as part of the introduction to what the meeting's going to be about, and let them know that you're going to respect their time and be able to just express that instead of just walking in and starting the meeting. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. Well, what I find fascinating is that, well, different meetings are different, right? I mean, if it's a like a training and a whole bunch of people are there, they want their time respected. Like, why are we waiting for the people who were slow? Yeah. But if it's a meeting and everyone's going to collaborate together, it's like, how do we respect it? It's, for me, that comes down to respect. How do we respect people, their time, their contributions? Yeah. Thank you for that. What kind of fears show up in environments that you've been a part of, and how do they manifest? Sorry, Sheila, you were talking and then we lost you.
Can you hear me now?
I think so.
Yeah, sorry, I keep losing connection. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So I'm a coach now. Most of my work is freelance, but I did do a spell doing consultancy actually in Debenhams the last couple of years, doing consumer insight. And one of the fears I noticed there was hierarchy, in that people naturally defer to somebody who's higher up the organization. And if you don't explicitly give people permission to be more open and honest, I think they're too frightened to be, because often you can, certainly in that organization, get quite dominant personalities that take over. And I know one of the meetings I ran, my boss, who was quite dominant, afterwards said, I need to take some lessons from how you run the meetings, because you basically include everybody, rather than her natural way was a bit more dominant. So yeah, I think trying to engage everybody and manage that fear so they do feel open.
Apologies. I'm having a battery low message, which shouldn't be happening. Maybe I can get some help. It's this cable should be. Yeah. There we go. It's good. I just had to reconnect my. I just had to reconnect my computer. Apologies for that. I think we're good.
Lori, I have a question. I think there was somebody earlier who asked about what's the difference between the model Be Safe and Certain versus SCARF model.
They're very similar. They come from the same sources, a lot of the same sources. We just, SCARF is copyrighted and Be Safe and Certain is not, and we're not allowed to use SCARF.
Yeah. I related to the belonging. I think this may be the difference. I don't know if it is, but to me, this would be the difference between SCARF and your model.
So SCARF has 5 elements, and instead of relatedness, we made that belonging. For me, it's honoring Maslow and belonging units.
Precisely.
First in the model, which I feel is really important. 4 of the elements are the same, and we added expectations, because we dream up so much stuff. Yeah. So it's very similar. We base it on the same.
Yeah.
Linda, how about if we bring people back and then we'll head to a Q&A. Does that sound good? Any other questions from you guys? Or thoughts about how to be inclusive or create engagement?
I often find myself that some people hold back because they often feel their voices aren't heard. So they are afraid to say things because they may be wrong. And when you can reassure people, again, appreciate and reassure them that all content is correct, nothing's wrong, everything is going to be right, and to bring that beginner's mind, right?
Yeah, and sometimes that's a habit that people have.
Mm-hmm.
I would say to that, Donnelly, that so many times we've heard that in the past, everything is okay and it's all valid. And then we put something out there and it gets immediately trashed. And we say, actually, what you said it isn't all valid.
Yeah.
And we remember that. That's been my experience.
People are coming back from their rooms. I'm going to be doing some Q&A, and I'm bringing actually, let's do Q&A from here. We've got some videos on, videos off, however you want to do this. You can do speaker view or gallery view. And it looks like there's 3 pages of people. And I am turning off non-video people. So questions, feel free to write them in the chat box. Do you have any questions or maybe some special comments about highlights that came out of your group? You could use the chat box. We have the mute buttons back on, I believe. Lindsay Byrne, you like Be Safe and Certain? Yes, we were just talking with a couple of people. Yes, Lindsay, you can use the Be Safe and Certain model. There's no copyright, it's ours. There's no I mean, we created it, but there's no copyright on Be Safe and Certain. So feel free to use it. We wanted something that was open source. And we also, the other thing, people ask me, what's the difference between Be Safe and Certain and SCARF? We also wanted a name an acronym that really meant something. So the brain wants to be safe and certain. And that's why we use that expression, that acronym. Any other questions, thoughts? The importance of communication is amplified at a time when people are disconnected physically, informal, asking questions, listening. So it's a tip. Any tips for helping your 90-year-old mother to regain her status purpose when she can't really see anyone? That sounds really difficult because somebody's used to a certain kind of status. The only thing I can think of is working with her, how to help her find like a purpose. What is her purpose? Maybe she can be creative in a different way. Creating different kinds of creativity being the creative one in the family gatherings. Thank you, Noella. Here's, before we start to wrap up, Linda, you've got, yep. As far as I can tell, there aren't any other questions. I'm going to go back to a share screen because I want to let you know about the other work, the program that this comes from. As I mentioned earlier, we have a suite of programs. You can see the Rewired to Relate 5-week virtual program. Yes? Thumbs up from anybody? Yeah? I'm assuming. Thank you. Thank you, Jensen. I can see. So we love this work. This emotional intelligence through the brain, by using the brain. You know, I recently was looking into the Stoics and what they were writing hundreds and hundreds of years ago. There's a lot of this same thing that's been going on for a long time. Coaching, therapy, different approaches, spirituality. And as I've learned neuroscience, it explains what's happening. Because if it worked in the past, if it's worked in the different domains, it's worked because it works for the brain. And so we really love bringing this work. It's a combination of experiential learning, emotional intelligence, collective intelligence, having people work with each other well, be collaborative, be engaged. And it's a lot. It starts with understanding the brain, like we've gone through today, understanding the brain and its reactions and helping people manage them. So one of the core elements that we do in our programs is, you know how I had you take a breath and come back? That's just a moment of mindfulness. So we have a little mindfulness and well-being that runs through the programs also, because we need that in order to manage our emotions. If we're stressed, we're going to be riled, we're going to be tapped back straight into our emotional brain, and more likely on the fear side. And that's the place where we're not our best selves and we're not working well together. So we're teaching people how to do that. We're bringing this to teams. Our intention is to increase engagement and to help people recognize and know how to use the more collaborative behaviors and less toxic behaviors, and of course manage stress, because it makes the whole equation work better. Rewired to Relate is our foundation program. It's 5 weeks long. It's a virtual, mostly a virtual program, but we also put people in cohorts. So we have the social learning aspect. We've learned so much, and here's some tips for you guys who want to be using your own virtual programs. Social learning, this is a social brain. It's a social instrument. We learn so much better together. Please have any virtual thing that you do, have there be cohorts. If you get people together, which we do in our programs, we create cohorts, we have learning groups, which is why we wanted you to have a conversation today. You just lock in learning. The language centers are right next to your memory centers. And as you get those two things working together, you remember things longer, you understand them better. They connect well and live longer as memory and learning. Social learning is really important. So we put people in learning groups. There's lots of exploration and sharing and collaborating and working together. And then there's learning elements online that are videos and writing, and it's just a combination of all of those essential learning elements. And then accountability is huge also. Again, for those of you who are creating a program, make sure that there's accountability and people have a way, nudges and reminders, time to watch this, time to do that. So we've put all that together in a 5-week program. It is the foundation of the rest of our program. Would love if you are interested in that program, or your friends might be interested, let us know. You will be getting an email from us about that. And a thank you for attending this call. You'll also have a recording of this and this session today. And you can share that with friends as well. We've got that both on YouTube Live, and we'll be posting it, I think, in another place to be determined. We'll let you know where that is. I'd love to hear any final comments in the, just a quick chat. What are you leaving with from this conversation? From this hour that you've invested learning a little bit about your brain, learning about the emotional brain, learning about how we collaborate, how we disengage. Mary Beth is asking, is the focus of the 5-week class? It is personal, but applied to teams and organizations. So it's very much like today, you learn be safe and certain and the reactions and how to calm them and different ways that they show up in teams and team members and in interactions. You're welcome. There's some thank yous, some helpful new thoughts. Great, Frank, thanks. Glad you like the be safe and certain model. Please use it. It's yours for the taking. Please feel free to share it. And if there's any questions or any other comments, I'm hanging here for a bit, so feel free to stay. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for dancing with us in our blips around creating groups. We're learning. This is the first webinar that we've offered, so I'm glad that you were here for our maiden journey, our maiden voyage. And there are 2 more coming up in 2 weeks and 4 weeks from now. We'll be letting you know about those. They're similar topics, all under the banner of Neuroscience Made Simple. So please come back and please stay in touch. And if we have mute buttons off, perhaps if there are people who want to make verbal comments, that would be great.
Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome. I couldn't see it.